Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Talking Philly Sports with Matty B program here on the Edge of Philly Sports with your boy Matty B. It is Tuesday, May the 16th, 2023, and it is a blessing, I guess is the word I want to use to be back with you every week that I have the opportunity to come here. Is just awesome, and this week is no different than any other week. And boy, we got a lot to talk about, man, because it just doesn't stop. I say this week after week, it just doesn't stop, and it is not no different today than any other day because we got a whole bunch to get into. Um, so let's kind of not waste time and let's get into it. So let's first start as we start every show, and that is, of course, in your day here in Philadelphia sports history, and it's a perfect segue to my first topic. Today in 1980, if you guys remember this date, back in 1980, a rookie for the Los Angeles Lakers by the name of Magic Johnson had to fill in for the injured center Kareem Abdul-Jabbar against the Sixers in Game 6 of the 1980 NBA Finals, and he went off in a tune of 42 points, leading the Lakers to the victory and their championship over the Sixers that day. Final of 123 to 107. Of course, the Sixers would get revenge about 3 years later, but it took a Moses Malone and 3 years in order for them to get there. But on this date, back in 1980, Magic Johnson, the rookie out of Michigan State, had his way with the Sixers in assisting the Lakers in winning the NBA championship. Perfect segue, right? By the way, that was brought to you by the people here at Talking Philly Sports with Matty B. Perfect segue into my first topic, and it's a topic that I very rarely talk about here on this program, and there's reasons for it because I came on the show a couple weeks ago and I said I was going to suspend my 76ers suspension. I made a promise to myself not to talk about this team until Glenn Rivers was fired. Well, today I got my wish, but I had suspended that suspension a couple weeks ago because I was feeling it with the Game 1 victory over the Celtics in the semis. Well, of course, we all know now things didn't quite work out for the Sixers, and I'm kind of late to the party on this because I haven't had the opportunity to give you my 2 cents worth. But on Sunday, the Sixers fell 122 to 88 in a game. Let's face it, folks. After the first quarter, that game was history. The Sixers came up in a lot of small, different ways. Everybody from Joel Embiid all the way down to the guy that cleans up the mop sweat did not come up big in Game 7, and the Sixers were shown the door by the Boston Celtics in Game 7 of the Eastern Conference semifinals. And today, the Sixers made my wish come true by firing Glenn Rivers and ridding ourselves of that part of the problem of this team. Now, Glenn Rivers is not the reason wholeheartedly why the Sixers are not advancing. There's other people that need to be held accountable. Daryl Morey, Elton Brand, who apparently Elton Brand has a job with the Sixers. I had forgotten that he was the GM. He must, that guy, Elton Brand, has the best job in the world. He's not accountable for nothing. He doesn't do anything, and he gets paid. Good God. What, can I be the GM of the Sixers? I mean, good night. But a interesting day for the Sixers as they have parted ways with Glenn Rivers. And hopefully it is the start of something new with this team. Daryl Morey should be kind of on the chopping block next, and then potentially moving some players along the lines as well. And in about 5 or so minutes from now, I'm going to have a special guest come on for about 10 minutes, and we're going to talk about the firing of Glenn Rivers and what this might mean for the future of the Sixers. Is this the first domino in potentially multiple dominoes to fall, or is this what we're going to get? Is this the pound of flesh we're getting? Is Glenn Rivers? Because if it is, it ain't enough. Because obviously this team for years now has not been constructed correctly, and Glenn Rivers today, just kind of ultimately it was known this was bound to happen as the Sixers were really embarrassed on the national stage on Sunday in a clinching game against the Celtics by a tune of 122 to 88. And as I looked at this series, and I looked at a lot of things in this series, obviously Game 1 was one of my might have been one of the best games I've ever watched as a Sixer fan. It's right up there with the clinching game in '83 against the Lakers. It's right up there with Game 1 of the 2001 finals against the Lakers. It's right up there in terms of one of the best games I've ever seen as a Sixers fan, and then to come from that into game 2 and then game 3, and you just kinda thought, "Well, yeah, maybe that was it," and then game 4, they somehow found a way to win, and then miraculously in game 5 up in Boston in a game that I gave them no chance to win, and I'm certain a lot of other Sixer fans did not give them a chance to win, were able to do it. And then it all kind of came down to game 6 for me. And it was a game that was there. Game 6 in Philly. And obviously, if you're going to look back on this series and kind of analyze where ground zero is, and it's got to be game 6, right? And more specifically, it's got to be that fourth quarter with about 7 minutes left to go in game 6 that the Sixers doomed themselves to lose this series. And in that game 6, the Sixers really were in a position to win. That they were the Celtics were not in any way playing well. The Sixers were ahead, but then they went cold and they got really cold and they got so cold that I don't think they hit a shot for the last 7 minutes of the game. And they watched Jason Tatum rise above a bad night that he was having in game 6 and come up huge for the Celtics down the stretch and take them to victory. And I knew coming off the floor in game 6 that this team was done. I honestly did. I didn't give him a chance in game 7. Now, I did not think it was going to be 122 to 80 or 112 to 88. I certainly did not think that. And that is obviously part of the reasons that everybody seems so kind of edged off right now is because of the way they lost. And then couple that with Joel Embiid's post game comments about how it takes more than him and James Harden to win. I mean, you're the MVP of the league, and you're going to sit up there and pretty much throw your team under the bus for that. Come on, man. Got to be better than that, Joel. And does that doom his chance here? Is he done in this town? Are they going to move off of Joel Embiid? Are they moving off of James Harden, Tobias Harris, Maxey? I mean, are they going to clean house? Is the process over? Is this it? Are we going back down into mediocrity starting next season as they attempt to maybe clean this thing off, or is it just a matter of getting rid of James Harden or not bringing him back, saving the money on that mega deal, going out for a free agent of our own? And attempting one more shot at this with a new head coach and maybe a new attitude. It's a very interesting situation that the Sixers are in right now. And today, Glenn Rivers, thankfully, thank God, was shown the door by the Sixers. And now maybe I can get back into the Sixers. Maybe I can start really enjoying them. But I'm not done. I want more. Daryl Morey needs to be held accountable because this is his team. And he can take Elton Brand with him because I don't know what Elton Brand does. I really don't. He's got the best job in America. He gets paid and does nothing and is held accountable to nothing. But Daryl Morey and Elton Brand need to be shown the door as well if we really are serious about fixing the culture of this team. No more Houston Rockets. No more running back the Rockets. We need to kind of attempt to cash in on Joel Embiid, or maybe not. Maybe it is time to trade Joel Embiid. And as I said, in about a minute or so, I'm going to have a special guest, and we're going to kind of cut up the firing of Glenn Rivers, obviously, and then maybe a little bit about what the future of this team will be. And as I said, I'm late to the party, and I realize that. And I've heard a lot of people on this network and nationally kind of go off about the Sixers, and a lot of people seem very like upset. I don't know how. I personally don't feel that way because I think they overachieved with the team they had. They never got that score, that second score that they needed from the perimeter. Haven't had that guy since JJ Redick. And then also what was the deal with the backup center? Why can't we find a backup center worth a damn in this town? And to me, it's pretty obvious why the Sixers lost, and it's pretty obvious what the issues of this team are. So I am not what you would call really upset about the state of the Sixers, or the fact that the Sixers lost this game. To me, it was more of a foregone conclusion than anything else. This team was not properly constructed, and everybody seems to go back to the Jimmy Butler situation. Uh, was that the end of the process? Was that the final nail in the process's coffin when they let Jimmy Butler go and then re-signed Tobias Harris, which, by the way, was an Elton Brand move. Um, and it's looking more and more like it every day that potentially might have been the best this team could have been, and keeping Jimmy Butler probably was the best decision that they could have made or should have made. And obviously, with the Heat now moving on into the Eastern Conference Finals to face the said Boston Celtics, it's looking more and more like it every day as well. But Sixers are moving on from Glenn Rivers, and how you feeling out there about that? So, oh, and look, just like that, the perfect segue. Let me introduce you to my guest. You guys might have seen him around the Edge of Philly Sports Network. Mr. Big Al. Al joins me here on the program. I don't know if you've ever been on Talking Philly Sports with Matty B. Al, is this your first time?
I have, just not recently. That's all.
Oh, really? It's been that long? I'm sorry, I forgot. Anyway, Al, well, welcome to the show, and thank you for taking a few minutes to kind of hop on with me. And obviously the topic of the night, and this is breaking news. It came out earlier today. Glenn Rivers shown the door by the Philadelphia 76ers after 3 seasons. Al, what is your reaction to that? Initial reaction. Give me what you were feeling the minute you saw or heard the news.
Well, I saw it coming. I think most of us saw this coming. This is the simplest way to start a fix a problem, patch a hole in it. I mean, it's the same problem every time, and the easiest thing to do is to get rid of the coach who's had more than enough opportunities, superstars, and everything else in between to make something happen. Now, am I blaming Doc Rivers for all the problems? Because I would have to say this was his best year yet as a coach of the 76ers. So it's just the way it all went down, and it fell apart, and it just seemed he's just he's easy pickings. And I honestly, my heart believes that James Harden pretty much said, "Show him the door," and they listened to him.
Yeah, listen, Al, I agree, and I think the biggest consensus that I've gotten from this, and as you mentioned it, there doesn't seem to be many fingers being pointed at Doc Rivers this year, especially, or especially this series against the Celtics, that he was the reason why they lost. Obviously, when you lose 112 to 88 in a clinching game, and both your superstars really were non-existent, it's kind of hard, I think, to blame the head coach. But is this enough, though? Is this the Sixers' sacrifice to the fan base, or is this the first of potentially many moves to come?
Well, something's got to happen. Unfortunately, it's going purely by gut. Is if Daryl Morey is going to stay in place and he's sticking around, which, listen, you have an absentee landlord in ownership in Josh Harris and the rest of the ownership. They pretty much gave Daryl Morey the keys to the kingdom, and I feel people have forgotten Elton Brand is in there. It's kind of like Dombrowski, and they may not be the GM, but they pretty much are the GM. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they're giving them the power to do so. So, like I said, as long as Daryl Morey is in charge, his fascination with James Harden will continue. I don't think James Harden goes anywhere unless some team's crazy enough to offer him 3 years, $100+ million. I think he's just going to opt back in and take his money.
So, if you had a crystal ball, Al, and we're talking next October, game 1 of the 23-24 season, does this team look drastically different other than obviously a new head coach? But are we looking at pretty much the same team stepping on the floor next season?
I can't say the same team. I think they move on from Tobias Harris. I think they can do a little work with him. I'm not saying Daryl Morey is completely inept as at moving people. I mean, he got us out of some bad contracts, but he even got us out of Ben Simmons. Maybe he could have done better, but whatever. I mean, call it what it is. James Harden, Ben Simmons. I mean, it's still the answer's the same, but at least it seemed a little better. I don't know if it's how much better, but it always washed out to be the same. But I think you're going to see a change there. I think Tobias goes. I think he's movable. I think he's proved a little bit. I mean, unfortunately, he was our top scorer come Game 7, with 19 points. But I just think they're going to have to make a change, and everything. Everybody jumps first. Oh, Dame Lillard, go get him. And he retweeted something when he retweeted Joel Embiid right after the game when he was going through his press conference. So I don't think it's the same team, but I'm also not going to say it's going to be how drastically different it's going to be. I think they're going to try and make some sort of splash, but what kind of splash they can make is a different story.
So Al, let's walk through this series, because I know I'm not what you would call I've never been very public about my basketball interest, I'm a huge Sixers fan, but I've never been a fan of Glenn Rivers, and I wasn't a fan of Ben Simmons. So I put a gag order on myself that they moved Ben Simmons. They did. And then I put a gag order on myself until they fired Doc Rivers, which, of course, today is the day that's officially lifted. And now I can.
I know when I saw your thing, it said Talking Sixers. I was like,
yeah,
I got a little choked up when I saw that earlier. I'm like, oh man,
I
moving on to bigger and better things.
It's a good day for me, at least.
Yeah.
Let's go through this series real quickly.
Do we have to? All right,
yeah, I think we do, Al, because I'm late to the party.
Have I not been tortured enough? All right, we'll let it go.
Indulge me, man.
Sure.
So game one was probably one of my, and I've said this, it's one of my top 10 Sixer games of all time. It's up there with the 0-1 finals, the game one. It's up there with the 83 clinching game against the Lakers. It's one of the best games. James Harden was 5 years ago, James Harden, and everything was what it needed to be for the Sixers as they stole one from Boston. And then game 2 and 3 were what they were. And then game 4, they found a way to somehow win, and then they did the impossible in game 5. I want to stop there right with you. One of the
I wish we all could. I think we all wish we could get that little encapsulate that moment in time and just leave it there. But go ahead.
One of the things I want to fixate on through those first 5 games was, one, the inconsistencies of James Harden, and 2, obviously Joel was hurt at some point, but then he comes back in game 3. And really, throughout the rest of the series, Joel Embiid was not a factor. Absolutely. And I don't know how you feel about that, but he wasn't a factor. I don't know if it was Boston, if it was the injury, if it was Joel's ego, if he finally got the MVP and all that. What do you feel like the inconsistencies? And let's stay on Harden and let's stay on Embiid. Let's talk about Harden first. How can you account for the up and down playoff series of James Harden?
Well, I mean, consistency is his friend, I guess, because that's what he's been consistent about, and all we could do is hope and pray that they could kind of change the narrative that we can get out of the second round, change the narrative that James Harden wouldn't either. I mean, he scores 45 points in a game, in another game he doesn't look like he's too afraid to shoot the ball. It's you can score 45 points in the game in the series. That's great, grand, and wonderful. But if the rest of the series you can't barely score 10 or 12 points, let's average that out, and that's what you got, and that's nothing impressive. One game does not win a series, and I've heard people say, James Harden, if it wasn't for him, we might have got swept, or a gentleman's sweep or something.
How does it matter? I mean, a loss.
I
mean, I don't care.
Game 7 where you quit halfway through the game. To me, I don't know which is worse. But I mean, both guys. I mean, we saw it like early third round, mid third round, or mid third quarter in the game 7. Like they were just trotting. They weren't hustling. I mean, if I'm looking at my window of opportunity shrinking, I'm looking up that game clock. They call it timeout. All right, we're already in the third quarter and we're down 20 plus points. I'm hustling, man. And you know what? I come from an old school thought process. I'm not sitting there and saying you get violent, but if you're gonna win, if you're gonna beat me, I'm gonna make sure you feel it the next day. You're gonna go home with some lumps and bruises. I'm gonna go up for that hard rebound. I'm gonna be throwing bows. I'm gonna be in the middle of it. I'm gonna be mixing it up. I'm gonna go out fighting. And there was no fight. And James Harden, like I said, kind of circling back to your question, like I wasn't against James Harden coming here, and I was as excited as the next person. I figured, he's a good piece, but again, Joel said it like, "Oh, me and James can't win it by ourselves," but they can't win if you guys aren't playing, because you can win it by yourselves. That's what kind of like annoyed me with that answer he gave. He can win by himself. I mean, all right, listen, if he's scoring 30 or 40 points in that game, they still probably lose, but it's a much tighter game, and maybe the guys have a little fight in them. That they just did not come to play. I don't know if they thought it was over already, or they thought something, they would walk right through it. I mean, you're in Boston, man, and that rivalry runs deep, and it's, I don't know, man, it's really deflating. It was more than just a bad loss. It showed you the character of this team and things that, we all thought certain guys were maturing and growing. And, I don't know. I think I had more respect for that Toronto game with a double or quadruple doink or whatever it was. It ended up being where he was crying at the end. The emotion showed. I mean, he's sitting there whispering in Tatum's ear and giggling. Oh, you guys beat us by 20, 30 points. He should be like, Jason, go eat go eat a bag of shit at that point. Like that's what he should have been saying to him. And I just I don't know if I have respect for these guys as players. I'm rambling at this point, but that's kind of how I felt. I mean, if you watch the post game, if you watch the post game, I did with Dibes and Sean Bernard and Pat Bernard, no relation. But I mean, all I could do is I said I had notes. I had notes upon notes, and this, that, and the other, and I just threw them out because why? Game 7, you guys didn't show up. Listen, if they just got beat because they were the better team, all right, that's fine. You shouldn't have been there. You earned a chip in a chair. You try your damnedest. You couldn't. The team was better, but the Celtics weren't better. That's the part I don't understand, and that's the part that will not sit well with me.
So you said it, and now I'm going to go down. Obviously, we talked a little about James Harden. Now let's go to the reigning NBA MVP, who looks like he literally took his trophy after Game 3 and went home. Mm-hmm. Why in the hell did again? I've been watching Joel Embiid in this town just as long as everybody else has, and I've never seen him as passive and docile and just not good than I did over the course of this series. He was a non-factor. Was this more Celtics in their game planning, or was it Joel Embiid? You know what? Hey, I won the MVP. I accomplished what I wanted to accomplish. Or is Joel Embiid a playoff fraud and just a regular season MVP?
Well, it goes with him and James. Playoff fraudulence seems to go hand in hand. And any other day, I probably would have been like, listen, guys, come on, let's call for what it is, and then they were making like he was kind of wasn't the same since he tripped over Marcus Smart, whatever. The excuses started to fly. Overall, we saw he could play. He played well. I mean, at one point he took that brace and he looked like there's no tears or whatever the problem is he's dealing with, sprains that he's dealing with. So if you can do it in that game, why you can't do it? That's the whole point, is about digging deep. Who isn't hurt at that point, or at least banged up? And it's the fortitude, man. That's the problem. That's an unteachable thing. That's something either you find out on your own, that you can dig down deep, and you got to want it, man. There is millions of Sixers fans who wanted it, but there wasn't one millionaire on a court that I think wanted it as bad as we did. That's sad. That's the sad fact. And I think give kudos to the Celtics for a good game plan, knowing what to do against him, overwhelming him, because that's what they did. They overwhelmed him. They kept him off balance. They couldn't hit a shot. I mean, the fourth quarter of a Game 7, and it should make you vomit. That I wouldn't take that game in a preseason game. I wouldn't take those points spread in the preseason game or regular season game, let alone Game 7 against one of the most classic rivals in NBA history.
Now, if you were like, say, on Mars and I brought you back for this series and I said, here, let's watch the Sixers and Celtics, and I'm going to give you a little trivia, or I'm going to give you a clue. The reigning NBA MVP is in this game on one of these teams. After watching the series, who would you tell me that the NBA MVP is?
Jason Tatum.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, it's listen, I've clamored for that man to win MVP. And let's understand something. MVP's regular season award has nothing to do with the postseason. And he won it, and rightfully so. I mean, the numbers were there for him. I believe that he deserved the regular season MVP, but the NBA MVP, the overall. I mean, listen, and I'm a realist, man. They're not moving on from Joel unless Joel wants to move on. They're not doing that. They're going to try to build something around him. But Joel needs to sit there and kind of look in the mirror and go, maybe I'm not Batman, but I can be, it doesn't have to be Batman and Robin. It doesn't have to be a 1 and a B. How about a 1A and a 2A, and a 1A and a 1 and a 1B maybe, I don't know, or 2A, like he has to, all right, I'm going to change my game up a little bit. I'm going to be more of a dominant big man. The points don't always have to go through me. I'm okay scoring 20 points or less. If James Harden's going to come out and score 35, 40 points or something, or whoever comes on the team and does it. But, a lot of guys came up small, but again, you're going to be the MVP. You're going to be the guy. You're going to be the max contract guy. You know, they're going to feed off your energy. At the very least, if you're playing your hardest, Tobias is going to come out there and lay it on the ground. D'Anthony Melton's going to come out there and lay it all out for everybody. They're going to put blood, sweat, and tears. They're going to make, like I said, you're going to make you earn. If the Celtics are going to win, I'm going to scratch and claw back and make them earn it. The fact that, I mean, I understand it's a business thing. I would have never taken them out. I would have never taken them out. I would make them sit there and play every last second. You know, and I hope that he's at home right now and he's looking up at that mantle, at that shiny new MVP award that he didn't really want, but we knew he wanted. And listen, who wouldn't want that? That's a big thing. Like, that's something that, you know, an NBA guy should strive for, an NBA player should strive for. But it means jack if you go again. Like, listen, they had the best chance ever. Not ever, but since in a long time, to go to a finals. This path was paved for them. The Celtics were a good team, a smart team, a disciplined team, a team that who had plenty of dog in the fight, and that's the difference there. And that it's not them being, you know, a better physical team. They don't have, like, Jason Tatum is a star. I don't know if I can call him a superstar. I don't know, but he might be. I mean, he made his bones that day. And, you know, but it's like, if I go back to the Nets series, I mean, are you going to give anybody some accolades just because they beat up on a bad team? I mean, you had a hungry dog versus a dead dog. And that's what that game turned out to be. And it was a sad fact that it happened on Mother's Day. And a lot of people had to sit there and make time, you know, and kind of let mom, and, you know, my mom likes to watch it with me. My wife likes to watch it with me. So it wasn't a big deal. But I mean, like, if I knew that was going to be the outcome, I would, like, I'm not going to waste my time with this. Let's go to brunch. Let's go do something. But
good point.
You know,
I never
it's
thought of
Jack.
that. I never thought of that.
It's a shame. It's a shame. And that's, I hope, like, my heart of hearts, like, the only thing that could come out of this good, like, trying to find that silver lining on a very gray cloud here, is that this was gut check time for them. But honestly, I think this is paycheck time for James Harden, and he'll go where the pay is. And I'm hoping. I want James Harden gone now. I'm done with him. I'm done with the James Harden thing. I like him. I think he has the talent. But again, we need gut check guys. You know, and I told, how many times have I said on this network alone, there was 3 major times during this whole process that it's gonna come back to haunt us. Okay. And one of the top things I said, it's 1A and 1B, I guess you can call it. I would say the top one was Jimmy Butler. Look who's still in the NBA playoffs. You know, an AC who scratch and claw their way through, still in the playoffs. And, you know, Markelle Fultz situation, not taking Jason Tatum, guy who just set an NBA Game 7 record with 50-plus points in a Game 7. And I sat there and I'm watching Game 6 with my wife. When things fell apart, I said, you know, I know he scored a few points in the fourth quarter, but you let him get hot, and if this team does not come out hot and hitting their shots, it's not gonna be pretty. And I mean, I didn't think this bad. I'm not sitting here gonna tell you that I'm like, oh well, they're gonna get walloped. Like, I didn't think that at all. I thought this was gonna be a much more tighter game, and boy was I wrong.
Yeah, no, I agree. The Game 6 to me was definitely the end of the series for me when I saw them fall apart in that 7-minute stretch at the end. My third, and I agree with your 2 points of the process. My third point of the process is the Bridges trade on draft night.
Oh, yeah, that's my third one. The Mikal
Oh,
Bridges.
really? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that was that. I said 3 things. That was number 3 would be Mikal Bridges. For a guy, Zaire Smith, who's not even playing in this league at this point. Like, whoever thought, like, I mean, that was, I think that was a Brown move. I'm not sure. I think he was active GM or whatever at that time. I mean, the guy had a storyline that, you know, it's great for the fans, but I mean, he has killer instinct in him. I mean, imagine you had Bridges on this team. I mean, we saw the fight he gave us with a team on the Nets where there's really no superstar, a lot of role players, but no real superstar. And I don't think Mikal Bridges is a superstar, but talk about a hell of a role player. I mean, he's more than what Maxey is at this point.
Yeah, I would.
If you had him I mean, maybe it's different. And and where's why does PJ Tucker have to grab Embiid during the series and like shake him? Why does Doc Rivers have to send a gospel hymn to James Harden? I mean, to get them going. Like what more motivation do you need to being a competitor? I mean, that's where I really lose faith, and I lose kind of just any like respect for these guys. When what more do you need? You got your MVP trophy. You guys make a ton of money playing a child's game, and and the only thing left for you to want to do is to be the best at that. And listen, one of the hardest trophies to win is the NBA championship trophy. I mean, it's just one of the hardest. But you're healthy-ish enough. I don't believe for a second that Embiid was a health issue at that point. I think any problem was between here, and the same thing with James Harden, and I think it was a trickle down effect. I think it was like a virus that ran through that locker room from Game 6 into Game 7. That everybody got the yips and everybody got the scareds, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, it did, and it looked that way, and it looked like everybody kind of checked out. You mentioned moving off of Tobias. You mentioned bringing. I mean, I think the handwriting is on the wall. I don't want James Harden back. It's gonna be the biggest story all summer if he's going to come back or not. I hope he doesn't. Hope they use that money somewhere else. Let's talk about one of the
Well,
other.
they're a little hamstrung even if he leaves. There's like some rules and stuff like that. I mean, it's better if he does, don't get me wrong, but it's not going to open up $30 million.
No, no.
But if you were to able to unload that and Tobias, but the problem is if you're going to use Tobias as a trading piece,
Yeah, Supermax for Supermax.
you're going to have to find somebody,
Yeah.
and you're not giving up something big, and that means you might have to give us something else like a D'Anthony Melton, or if somebody really big, and they're going to be asking for Tyrese Maxey or something.
Okay, there you just jumped onto my third point there. We saw Tyrese Maxey come up real short in these playoffs, and maybe we were asking him to do too much at this stage of his development. I don't know. I've never been the biggest Maxey fan. I think he's definitely a spark plug, and he seems to be like on that fringe of being something. But do we, in the essence of trying to win a championship, move on from Maxey and bringing back a more established talent, a shooter or whatever, somebody that we can help win now with? Is Maxey on the table if you're Elton Brand? I don't know if I don't think he makes
Yeah,
trades,
right.
but if
It's
he's
Alan
not right now,
Brady. He's just collecting a paycheck at this
and
point.
I led into the show with that. He's the luckiest man in America. He gets paid, is not held accountable, and I don't think he
No.
does anything, honestly. So,
Mm-mm.
is Maxey on the table? Seriously on the table for you this summer?
I think anybody's on the table. The problem is the first question they have to ask is, are we all in, or are we going through a rebuild or a retool or whatever,
Right.
you want to call it? Because if you retool, then you retool with, you might want to keep Maxey for a retooling. But the problem is the Sixers really have no leverage in any of these things. They have no, it's up to James Harden if he sticks around. So that's up if another team's willing to give him a lot of money. They're probably looking for 3 more years. Like I said, in that $30-ish million, $30+ million a year range. I don't think anybody watching this playoffs would want to really do that, even if you go on vacation with him.
We have no draft.
You have
Nothing.
no draft capital to work with. So what do we have that's a bargaining chip? Maybe somebody sees Tobias Harris as an important role player and he could be useful, but you're not giving up a superstar or anything big for that. So you're gonna get another role player. Maybe you're trading Tobias Harris for for something else. And I see this. In my heart, I hope they don't, be honest with you. But at the same time, you have to listen. You have to like go beautiful mind creative with this one. Like you have to sit there and find out what are all your scenarios. And if one of those scenarios is trading Maxi, it better be, nothing's, guaranteed, but it better be as close to a guarantee as you can get, because if you're going to build around you're going to build around somebody into the future. It's not going to be Embiid. It's going to be Maxi.
Right.
And the answer, you're kind of like the first part of the question is, did we ask for too much? Yeah. Listen, his energy was great. He's got to learn a little tempo and a little control with his speed. He's like the Flash over there who gets his feet for the first time. He's got to learn to control his power there. And his, let's see what, I think I really would be hell bent on trying not to trade him. But again, if somebody's willing to offer me something worthwhile, I'm willing to listen.
And then the last question, I have two more questions for you, and I'll let you go, Alan. I want to thank you for coming on and talking with me. So, but the first question, or the second to last question, is this: Joel Embiid, is he on the table? Is he on the table for you?
He can't be on the table unless they're. I said this to somebody else before. I said he's not a car. He's not a house. He's not a car. You can't say, I'm going to see if I can sell my house, and if I don't get a right offer, we'll keep him. We'll keep the house another year or two. That house won't be happy. Okay, you either have to choose to be ready to move on from him, because once it gets out, it's out, and he's not going to be happy, and he's going to demand a trade. And listen, he's a superstar. He's going to have control on where he goes. So it's not like the doors are open. I mean, you're going to get a haul, but a haul of, let's play the scenario first. So you get a bunch of first round picks. If you're a team trying to get Joel Embiid, are you trying to win? You're trying to win now, I would imagine, right?
Right.
Like the Miami Heat, like that's one that the name keeps coming up, and you could get some role players, plus some picks or something along those lines. But what are you going to get? Some late round picks, because they're going to be in the mix, especially if you add Embiid in there. And that's what makes Embiid like scary. It's just he has to retool his game. He has to kind of be like, all right, I got to be a big man. But we're not going to win with just a big man that scores a lot. You need good role players to take it up when he's down a little bit, because obviously he gets down. Like I said, it once again falls in between the ears a lot more here than physically in physical capabilities, even his injuries. But I mean, again, if the phone rang and it's Miami and they offered me a king's ransom and it sounds worthwhile and it gives you guys to work with, then we'll talk. I would be willing to listen to anything, but actively, openly shopping him, that may lead to a bigger problem.
Yeah, you mentioned the haul that you would get for Joel, and as a smart GM, I wouldn't want those first round draft picks or any kind of draft pick capital to be later on, not until later on, because obviously I'm going to wait for Joel Embiid to bottom out with that team and hopefully collect on some for high first round picks, and that would also signal the end of the process and signal the end of our run. And
I think Game 7 might have signaled the end of that. I mean, at this point, I think the process is popsicle sticks and duct tape, my friend. I'm just being dead honest. Like I don't see where there's any. I don't see where there's any real hope with the process unless they get a shrink to work with him in the offseason and to try to open up Pandora's box, because it's mental, and listen, man, it's easier to get back from a back injury or a knee injury or an ankle injury or whatever, fracture orbital or whatever the hell else he's had in his lifetime. But a head injury or a head issue, that scars and that doesn't go away.
Yeah,
that's the worst type of reoccurring injury you can have.
Well, talk to Ben Simmons, because apparently that's what he suffers from.
Oh, did you see his little Instagram post with the wine?
Yeah,
what a troll! I mean, listen, good for him taking a couple of last pot shots, but again, you could even play. You wouldn't play, and I mean, let's be honest, he didn't play because he wasn't injured. He just didn't play.
He didn't want to play.
Listen, whatever. You're gonna if that makes him feel better. I mean,
no,
that screams his immaturity.
Ben Simmons would not have done anything to change the outcome of that ball series.
I heard people tweeting and saying, "Well, he could have defended Tatum or Brogdon or Jaylen Brown or whatever," and that might have made a defensive difference. But
I need people to score.
It's not even just scoring. Like, even if he was able to significantly decrease, I'm talking significantly. Let's play optimistic here. If he was significantly able to decrease the amount of scoring that they did and kept them off balance more than they were, do you think he would rise to the occasion?
No.
No, he wouldn't. If Embiid and Harden started slipping, somebody would slip even more into the darkness would be him.
Yeah, no, that would have changed absolutely nothing for the Sixers,
Mm.
and it would have been worse. I mean, he couldn't even handle Trae Young. I mean, for God's sake. So, I anyway, final question, Al, I'm gonna let you go. And by the way, you can catch Al tomorrow night on the Edge of Philly Sports, who, by the way, I don't know if you got the message, but I need you to do the Fightins final on your show tomorrow night to
Yes,
wrap
I
up.
did get. We will kick off EOP live tomorrow at
Okay.
8:30 with a little abbreviated version, Fighting's final, cooked right into it, and then we'll get into the rest of the sports talk.
I
Joe and
appreciate it.
myself, and we might have a special guest we haven't announced yet. We're waiting to clarify.
So there you go. You have to check out tomorrow at 8:30, the Edge of Philly Live with Al and Joey Sheeran, right? Joey's
Yep,
back.
Joey's back. I think Fred's off this week, but yeah,
Awesome.
Joe. It would be me and Joe tomorrow, definitely.
So final question, and
Mhm.
it's really kind of around why I wanted to talk to you in the first place. Glenn Rivers is out. Who in Al's mind is the perfect fit? Is he an internal candidate? Are we talking Sam Cassell? Is it an external candidate? I've heard the Jay Wright stuff starting to flow around, which I would Jay Wright wouldn't do that to himself, but um, who is the perfect fit to attempt to salvage the process for the Sixers as a new head coach?
I mean, I could see Monty and Rivers swapping jobs. Rivers heading to Phoenix and Monty coming back home. Um, I mean, Sam Cassell seems to be the fan favorite, and I
Right.
wouldn't be against it. But again, Sam Cassell's been on the bench the whole time. So is it because Doc Rivers, it kind of like, is it going to be like the Rob Thompson, Joe Girardi type switch where, because one was in charge, he was limited in what he could say or do, or, it's a whole like, how much does Embiid and any of the superstars respect them? Do they leave, because they don't want to stick around for this because, I mean, not that many of these guys were Doc Rivers guys, but they might, leave and go with him. Or I mean, that I would say if they're going to pull, it's going to be Cassell. But I wouldn't be surprised if dark horse. I don't know how much of a dark horse he is, but Nick Nurse.
Yeah, I've heard
Because here's my thing is at least Monty went to a finals better than Glenn has done since 2008.
Yep.
And Nick Nurse has won it all.
Yep.
So if you want somebody with the breed, maybe that's what you need. Like somebody can, show here's some hardware that might get you excited to see. And I took it from you. That hardware came off of your blood, sweat, and tears.
Did.
So maybe I have the secret sauce. I like Nick Nurse. I do, and I think he championship caliber. I don't. He's the kind of guy though. My one issue, not one issue. My one thing I would worry about is he tends to leave guys in there for a while. Like he's the kind of guy. If you look at his numbers with his superstars are higher, during the regular season than others, and can Embiid handle that? And that the answer to that is absolutely not.
No.
And looking at again silver linings, do we find a backup big man in B-Ball Paul and Paul Reed, and maybe that gives if he can maybe play a couple more minutes than usual, and keep Embiid fresh, kind of like PJ Tucker. We kept him in vacuum sealed, ready for the playoffs, and that maybe that's how they work it. But my gut would go with either Sam Cassell or Monty. But I could see a third, dark horse in Nick Nurse.
So no Jay Wright.
I don't think Jay Wright wants the job.
Yeah, why would
Even if you have
would he?
I mean, if I said to you like, hey, Matt, you're from outer space, you don't know anything about it. If I said the reigning MVP, the best player in basketball, they need a new coach to coach him, you would think that would be the most desirable destination in the
Yep.
offseason. No, it's dysfunctional. And it's from the brass down, man. Like I said, absentee landlord in the top brass. They're letting a guy call the shots who is infatuated with the guy they have to make a hard decision on. And that's
Yep.
like it's like that makes it real difficult. Like, I mean, James Harden just seems to know how to kind of wiggle his way into top brass and go on vacations with the owners of the Houston Astros and Houston Rockets and go, and I have a painting of him somewhere hanging up in the house of Daryl Morey. I mean, that's the problem. That's the part that scares me the most. I think I'm not saying it's being overlooked, but it's not coming out of people's most mouths. The guy who makes the decision is the closest to it. It's like,
Yeah.
it's borderline. I know it's not the same definition, but it's borderline nepotism. I mean, it's almost like he thinks he's his son or his family member, and he's picking him not because he's the best option or is the best fit for this team, but it's the best thing for him.
It definitely seems that way, and obviously, if Daryl Morey survives the purge, it's going to be interesting to see what he does this summer.
Well, I think he
Al,
did. I think there's no. I don't think there's any at this point. I mean, I'd be if you let him, like, pretty much he's been kind of MIA. Oh, he's out checking out the young guys. He's here. He's the combine. He's doing this. He's doing that. You just fired your coach after a disgusting loss in the NBA. You're telling me your GM can't make a speech? But the fact that if you fire Doc, I mean, don't you fire Daryl Morey too? If you're doing clean house, if you're bringing in a new GM, if you're bringing in a new head coach, because you don't bring in what are you gonna go head coach shopping and then bring in a GM? I
well,
think the fact that they tipped their hand, I don't think Daryl Morey's going anywhere.
to be specific, Daryl Morey is the president of basketball operations. He's not the GM. It's Elton Brand, who's by title the GM.
Or what operations or not, like whatever his title may be, whoever's gonna be. I mean, pretty much he is the assistant owner. He's like the assistant to Jeff Lurie or John Middleton or any of those guys. Like, those guys are at least involved, and sometimes at one point detrimentally to the team. I'm not sitting there saying Josh Harrison needs to be the guy who makes all the calls or anything. I mean, the guy spent money where money's due at times, but it seems like he's more worried about buying a football team, one of our rival teams again, might I add, than worried about what happens with the Philadelphia 76ers.
Yeah. No, I understand. It's very dysfunctional, and that also kind of concerns me about potential free agents wanting to come here to begin with. That they really want to insert themselves into this, even if they are a superstar quality type player searching for a championship. Is this really where they want to go? There's a lot of questions that need to be answered.
But can they even come? Like, is there a seat open for them?
Yeah.
Can we? Because we could want, they could want. It could be like, just on the other side of the glass, just reaching for each other, hoping that you could come be a Sixer and you want to become a Sixer. Do we have the money to do it? Do we have do we have the personnel to get rid of to make it happen? Like, because if it's a trade, the other team's going to want something out of the deal. If it's a free agent, he's going to want to get paid.
And I'm telling you, and this is just coming from my heart or my instincts, nobody's moving off Maxey, or not Maxey. No one's moving off Harris without Maxey. I'm telling you, he is.
You're not getting anything of real. You're not getting anything of real. I mean, unless you're trying to move on a guy who's on a longer contract and you just kind of like want to get a guy you can get 1 year out of and be, kind of wash your hands of him. And you're like a team that's in rebuild that has a good team. Like take like how funny would it be if we were traded him out and got Bridges? Like, take him for instance. Like, I don't know what his contract is left. I would have to look at it, but just take a guy like him, a guy of his caliber, a guy like we've been like, sorry, we let you go. Then like, well, we don't want to be stuck with him for 3 more years. We're going through a rebuild. We need to get rid of people. Fine, we'll trade you Bridges. We'll take the bias and maybe a second round pick or
2031. That's the only pick we have.
Yeah, like a Cork Maz or a smaller bench player, a Daniel House, but probably going to be more like D'Anthony Melton. That would be the only way you could get something like that.
I do it in a heartbeat. I do it today. Let's do it now. But I just feel like the only way that my fear is this: that it's just going to be the same product next year. It really is different. What do they say? Same circus, different clowns, and that's pretty much what we're looking at here. I think the process is stuck in the mud with this tire spinning right now, and it's just a matter of when we just had enough of Joel Embiid, or Joel Embiid's had enough of us, and we decide to make the final step there and move off of him. To me, I just think the window is closed, and we're not going to win that championship with the current construction of the Sixers. I really don't.
Yeah, it's really listen. It's one of those things. Prove us wrong, and they haven't been able to. Listen, we all been sitting there going, please just get past the second round. Please get past the second round. Get past the Celtics, but it's not happening. It hasn't happened, so it's hard to believe. It's hard to believe that it's going to happen.
All right, Al, real quick when I let you go, where can the good folks, other than at EOP Live, find you out there?
You can follow me on Twitter at Big Al EOP. Trying to tweet as much as possible, putting out my points. You can check us out on EOPsports.com. Plenty of articles coming out from myself, from you, and the other contributors there as well. And of course, anywhere the letters E, O, and P come side by side, I'll be there.
Yep. And also, you can find Al with me as well on the Fightins Final, along with Pat Bernard and Mike Laro. So if you can't find Al, you're just not looking for him because he's out
You're
there.
not looking.
He's
You're not
right in
looking
front of
hard
you.
enough. I'm a big bald guy. You can't miss me.
All right, brother. We'll talk, man. I appreciate you coming on.
All right, man. Thank you. Have a great one. Good show as always, bro.
Thanks. All right. So there's Big Al joins me as here on the show, and I want to appreciate it. I want to thank him once again for coming on. So let's segue real quick. We spent a long time on the Sixers, and I had to get my point out there about the fact that I just think that this thing is dead, and this now is a matter of not accepting the reality of the situation with the Sixers and the way they're built. I don't think we're going to win with this team. I don't think we're going to win with Joel Embiid, to be more specific. And next is the realization of that, and getting on with our lives, and moving off of Joel Embiid, and accepting the fact that the process didn't work. It was a great attempt, but it's just the people that were in charge of it made the wrong decisions. As simple as put as that. But it definitely hurt. It hurt, man. Especially the way the Sixers went down. It was not good. Um, Not a good way to end a season. So thanks to Al for coming on. As I wrap up my Sixers talk, now let's move on to the Phillies because I have some splaining to do. So as you guys know, I am the co-host, co-founder, co-contributor, conspirator, whatever you want to call me, to the Fightins Final. It's a show that I started here on the network, and it's grown in leaps and bounds, and we've done a great job with it. And we've expanded the crew this year to include Al, Mike, and Pat. Well, last night I was on Fighting's final duty, and I failed to come on the air because I fell asleep. So I want to apologize for that. I was on West Coast duty. I knew I had West Coast duty, and I still didn't make it. And there's no excuse. So I'm sorry. I will be on tonight, following the game tonight out in San Francisco. They are still embattled in that series. Game 2 is tonight. But here I am on my show tonight, and I have an opportunity to right the wrong. I feel like the Sam Beckett from Quantum Leap. I have an opportunity to go back in time and right the wrong right now, and hold my own condensed version of the Fightins Final from last night right now. As Al's going to hold a condensed version of the Fightins Final from tomorrow's game on his show, I'm going to go back in time and talk about Game 1 of this series real quick. I was supposed to host anyway, so it's really not. I'm not changing anything, but last night the Phillies went out to San Fran and got apparently I missed the memo here, and I've missed the memo, I guess, from the beginning of the season. Um, but yesterday was a bullpen game. Connor Brogdon got to start. When an inning or two, Bailey Falter came in, and Bailey faltered it up in a big way. But wasn't really pitching well. Was not helped at all by the defense. Gave up 6 unearned runs in a span of an inning. Really kind of opened the floodgates for the Phillies. They ended up losing last night 6-3. Falter was then sent back down to AAA today. Eric Yulmanich, he's one of the free agent. Actually, he was acquired in the Soto trade. He was called up to the Phillies, and he'll be joining the team, I guess, out in San Francisco. But Falter, after sporting an 0-7 record to start the season, is now back in AAA, where unfortunately he belongs, and that's just the reality of it. I never supported him coming out of the bullpen to be a starter in the first place, but obviously he's just not able to kind of figure things out right now, and he's going to go back to AAA, hopefully, and be able to figure himself out. But what are the Phillies going to do now? Right, we got Ranger Suarez back in the rotation. Well, what are we doing? Have we just opened up the doors to a bullpen game every 5th day, starting in the month of May? Am I going to have to endure a bullpen game every fifth game at the 41st game of the season mark? Because I can't, because that's piss poor. That to me is horrible ownership, horrible leadership that you cannot scrape together five quality starters and put out there on the mound. And right now, the Phillies starting rotation is really the anchor around their neck. And last night, yeah, again, I guess you really can't blame the starting rotation because it was a bullpen game last night. Just not really doing anything. It was the same MO. They got down early, they got down often, and they were unable to fight their way back as they fell last night, 6-3, dropping on back under the 500 mark now at 20-21. A couple disturbing stat lines from last night's game. Not going to get into the box score. This is a condensed version of the Fightins final. I'll be back later tonight, following game two, to give you the actual Fightins final for tonight's game. But last night, the Phillies committed another error. It opened the doors to that 6-run inning. The Phillies have now committed errors in the last 4 games, and then 5 out of the last 6 games they've committed errors. They've raised their season total now up to 19 errors for the season. What is going on there? All right, the defense was holding steady. Now it's starting to kind of take on water. I don't understand it, but now 5 errors in their last 6 games. The runners in scoring position batting average is also taking a nosedive. The Phillies were 0 for 8 with runners in scoring position last night. Over the last 2 games, folks, the Phillies have now gone 0 for 22 with runners in scoring position, dating back to the Colorado Rocky game on Sunday, where they were 0 for 14 in the 4-0 loss. They were 0 for 8 last night. They are now 0 for their last 22 with runners in scoring position. 86 for 356 for the season. That lowers their batting average to a putrid 241. Batting 241 with runners in scoring position. Just dreck. They left 8 more runners on base last night. They're closing in on 300 runners left on base for the season. Their average is up to about 7 a game. And again, these are not hard stats to kind of put or pin why this team is struggling. I really don't. It's not hard. But getting back to the Bailey Falter thing, um, here's the deal. When you look at the situation with why Bailey Falter was inserted into the starting lineup in the first place, it kind of makes you cringe on the plan in the offseason. The plan was obviously to let Zach Eflin go in free agency, let Noah Syndergaard go in free agency, bring in one pitcher, and then say Bailey Falter was going to be a candidate for a starting job, and then Andrew Painter was going to be the other candidate. If that was what they're telling us was the plan, that's who's running the ship over there. I mean, what's Dave Dombrowski? Is he taking lessons from Elton Brand? I mean, I don't understand what they saw that made them think that Bailey Falter could handle the load of a fifth starter all season long, based on what the sample size he gave us last year, which was not consistent. It wasn't. It wasn't as this bad, but it wasn't really that consistent. And then, of course, we can talk about his NLCS debut, which was what, a third of an inning. So right now, the Phillies are reaping the fruits of a piss poor offseason plan when it came to starting pitching. They are painfully thin. They got Ranger back, and he pitched well when he came back. Obviously, it's his first game back. What do you expect? But now we got 4. Who is the number 5? As I mentioned, are we now going into a bullpen game mode at game 41 of the season? Because that's piss poor if that's the case. That's bad management. That's people not knowing what they're doing with their jobs and figuring out who these players are. Who is the 5th starter? Matt Strahm? He was brought here to be a reliever. Bailey Falter? Obviously not. The kid they brought up from Lehigh Valley, Eric Ulrich, whatever his name is, he's a reliever. Is he going to be the 5th starter? Or or God help us, are we going to a bullpen game configuration? So last night was not a good game. 6-3. Offense faltered again. I hate to use the word falter, but I can't stay away from it. But offense faltered again. 0 for 8 with runners in scoring position last night. 0 for 14 with runners in scoring position against the Rockies on Sunday. 0 for their last 22 with runners in scoring position And they've committed now 5 errors in their last 6 games, as they lost last night 6-3. And then tonight, as I mentioned, I will be back live after game 2 of the man, said it again. Said the 49ers. I will be back live after the Giants game 2, and we'll take a look at the Titans final. But I want to apologize for last night because I never miss a show, and I haven't. But I was tired. I was way tired last night, and watching a 6-3 game doesn't do wonders for a person who's tired at 11 o'clock at night. It was like it was last week or 2 weeks ago when I was doing the Dodger series, trying to stay awake in 13-4, 12-5. I mean, it's hard to try to stay awake late when you're watching that kind of dreck on TV. But tonight I'll be there. I promise. I promise. I promise. I promise. Steven has an interesting suggestion. Outswing opponent was their fifth starter. Steven, I disagree. I think they gave up on that outswing their opponent thing last year when it didn't work out. But if that is the case, and you might be right, then we are in for a interesting season, because then that tells me this is going to be a bullpen game every fifth day. Because once again, I know there's a lot of Andrew Painter supporters out there, and I hope the kid is good, and I hope he's not long term hurt, and I hope that he has a fruitful, glorious major league career. But the thing coming out of spring training this year, the plan out of this winter, was to give a kid who's never pitched above Double A the opportunity to be your fifth starter. If that was really the plan, wow, I'm giving somebody way too much credit over there in South Philadelphia, because giving a guy, as I mentioned, who's never pitched above Double A, stamping him as your fifth starter, that's a risky plan. That's balls, man. That's a lot of balls. And but but yeah, so um I'll be back for the Titans final tonight. We'll talk more about the Phillies, but obviously, when you look at the starting rotation, that is the issue right now with this team. I know I gave you some of the offensive numbers, the left on base, the score runners and scoring position, batting averages, and that's that is all as well. But it really boils down to the starting rotation. Just has not, the three pitchers, Walker, Nola, Wheeler, just have not found their stride yet. You add Suarez coming back from an injury. He may be they may figure themselves out, but it still leaves us one pitcher short. And that's concerning if that was the plan coming out of spring training. And Steven says Mick Abel is playing well. He is, again, at Double A. He's never pitched above Double A either. So these two individuals, Abel and Painter, are definitely the future of the Phillies starting rotation. But we're obviously coming off of a season where we had expectations of getting back to a World Series, but we're not going to do it with four starting pitchers and then going to a bullpen game in May. It's just not going to happen. People are going to get burned the hell out, and the bullpen's going to be shot. It's already kind of shot, but it's going to be really shot if that's what the plan is for the Phillies. So more on the Phillies a little bit later tonight on the Titans final. Well, I'll be back at you. And let's pay some of those bills. And here is your lineup on the Edge of Philly Sports this week. Obviously, Tuesday night is me. It's a dose of me tonight. Me, Braden, here on the show, and then I'll be coming back at you at the Titans final a little bit later tomorrow. Party on Broad, Philly Press Box Radio, and the Edge of Philly Sports, which my guest Al is the host of. So make sure you're checking out everything that's happening on EOP every day, all day long. Philly Sports Trips. It's official. We already know when we're playing our opponents and who they are, obviously. So what are you waiting on? Get over to phillysportstrips.com and book your trip and tickets now. But if you're not looking for football, or if you can wait for your football, or you need an instant Jones right now, they got great Philly stuff happening this summer. A trip out to Pittsburgh and a trip out to Wrigley Field in Chicago, or just a little bit of what they have to offer. So head over to Philly Sports Trips. Check out, they have offer. And don't forget, if you're in the Delco area, and again, I don't know why you'd be in Delco, but if you are, head on down to Dolan's in Ridley Park. Go see PJ and the gang down there. You never know what or who is going to walk through the front door. They got Quizzo, music, great times, and memorabilia giveaway. What are you waiting for? Head on down to Dolan's. And same thing if you're looking for those hard to find sports, concert, and theater tickets. Sherry's Ticket Town at www.sherrystickets.com. Family owned and operated since 1946. Save an additional 10% when you enter the promo code EOP10 for those hard to find sports concert theater tickets with great fees or great prices and no hidden fees. Go to Sherry's Ticket Town. Workman's compensation, motor vehicle accident, personal injury, or criminal law. Dave Cherry at 610-565-0300. Tell Dave and the fellas over there and the ladies over there as well that Matty B, talking Philly sports with Matty B, and the Edge of Philly Sports Network sends you. All right. Now it's going to lead me into my final piece of the night. Steven says, Strom, too valuable a pen piece to start. I agree. He's also was brought here to be a pen piece. So, yeah, we got to leave him in the ball pen. Leads me to my final. And the show's ran late tonight, so I'm going to wrap this up quick because it's not going to take long. Your Philadelphia Flyers are at it again. Last week when I came on here and kind of went over my plan, my personnel plan for the Flyers, obviously there was a lot of unknowns at the time. We didn't know if Daniel Barrera was going to be the GM. We didn't know who the president of hockey operations was. We didn't know any of that. We did know the Flyers are going to be selecting 7th in this year's draft right now. But later on last week, the Flyers made it official. Daniel Barrera is no longer the interim general manager. He is your GM. And Keith Jones, that's right, that Keith Jones from the 94 WIP morning show, former Flyer, former Colorado Avalanche, and national NHL broadcaster and Flyers broadcaster, is now your new president of hockey operations. And on Friday, the whole crew of them had themselves a press conference down there at Wells Fargo. Well, they were all introduced, and Dan Hilfery, or Hilfery, however you say his name, the new Dave Scott, let's call him that, the new governor of the Flyers, was presiding over the events, and both Barrera and Jones got an opportunity to talk and answer questions from the vaunted Flyers media, who did not disappoint yet again by serving up some softball questions again. So it was actually really, if you have the 25 minutes or 45 minutes, however long it was, head over to YouTube and search out that press conference. There's a few nuggets, and I want to talk about one of them right now. It was a question that was given to actually, it was not a question. It was John Tortorella inserting his foot in his mouth yet again. Steven says, Kim Perrant was my 8th grade lab partner. She would not be happy with what you or I have to say. He inserted his foot in his mouth, in my opinion. And I love John Tortorella. I think he's a great coach. I think he's definitely what we need here right now. But when the question, I guess everybody was kind of obviously asking the obvious about Daniel Barrera and Keith Jones's connection to the Flyers of the past, and yet again following that through on that rabbit hole of being former Flyers now in management positions. What was their take on all that? And Tortorella said, basically to a point, I'm paraphrasing, that I don't understand why people have a problem with that. Why do people think that former players are diseased that are stepping into management positions? And of course, what did the Flyers media do with this? Nothing. They just let them say it, and they moved on. So I'm thinking to myself, if I was down as a Flyers fan and as a member of the Flyers media, I would have a definite retort for Mr. Tortorella. And I would basically say that, John, I got your point, and I understand what you're saying, but it's people like, and I hate to bring them up, but Bobby Clark, Paul Holmgren, Ron Hextall, and Bill Barber as a head coach, Paul Holmgren as a head coach, Craig Berube as a head coach. I'm naming off all a bunch of former Flyers, but they're the reasons that we are where we are right now as an organization. They have systematically run this team into the ground over the last 40 years. And yes, starting with Bobby Clark. I mean, Bobby Clark being the most successful out of that group. But what did Paul Holmgren do? Paul Holmgren was trying to be Bobby Clark's clone and did nothing with this organization. And then I don't even get me started on friggin' Ron Hextall. I mean, we're pretty much at the gates of hell because of Ron Hextall. So yes, as much as I hate to say it, there is a little bit of ire or eyebrows being raised every time the Flyers hire some former player and place him in GM seat, or they place him in the head coaching seat, and now the president of hockey operations seat. But of course, the Flyers media, being the stewards of journalistic integrity, did absolutely nothing with this and let it go. But John, listen, I love you as a coach. I think you're the perfect person. But do a little history, do a little homework on this team before you kind of start that nonsense about whether they diseased. No, they're not diseased. Of course they're not. But there is a little, there is a little in the closet type stuff that we're concerned about when it comes to hiring on former players in management positions. And again, congratulations to the Flyers media for once again missing an opportunity to kind of defend the Flyer fan base. Really appreciate it, guys. Doing a hell of a job down there. Mm-mm. Johnny T doesn't get this false narrative. This team pushed us for 48 years. We won with Perrant, not intimidating. Yeah, well, listen, I agree, Stephen. You're absolutely right. You got to do some history, do some homework, man. This team hasn't won a Stanley Cup in going on 50 years. And ever since that time, they've been kind of run by former players in some capacity. So again, and Bobby Clark, I wear a Bobby Clark jersey to every Flyer game I go to. He's the greatest Flyer that ever played the game. I'm not saying I don't wear the Bobby Clark GM suit because as a GM, he was okay. He made some great deals. He made some bad deals. He was the best trade he ever made was bringing John LeClair here, but we couldn't win a Stanley Cup. Paul Holmgren was just like Bobby Clark, tried to be just like him, and it was worse. And then, of course, Ron Hextall. So yes, there is a little bit of eyebrow raising going on when you hire Danny Briere, who has no experience as an NHL GM. Hell of a player. Definitely understands what the player of today is and what they look like, because he was the player of today in his day. He was ahead of his time when he was playing. So he knows what he's looking for. I get that. And what is Keith Jones? What is his qualifications to be the president of hockey operations? Out of Keith Jones's own mouth, he said, teamwork. That's right. Teamwork is the dream work, folks. That is what that Keith Jones says he's qualified to be your president of hockey operations because he knows what it's like to be part of a team. Well, you know what, Keith? That's great. If I would have known that's what they were looking for, I would have applied for the job because I was a senior leader in the United States Army for 30 years. You know what? That's a hell of a team, too. I know what about teamwork. I've been to combat with my team. If I would have known that all you had to do to get the job as the Flyers president of hockey operations was be a good team player, man, I would have been the first person filling out that application. What in the hell is he talking about? Teamwork. Man, I don't want. So listen, I don't want to get too far into this, but obviously when you look at these two individuals, they are anti so totally on the other side of Chuck Fletcher, and at the very least bit, they are aware what the Flyer tradition used to be, and potentially how important that was, and how important that is to restore. And again, I thought we had the right coach. Obviously, with the issues with Chuck Fletcher, I do like the fact that they separated the position of GM and president of hockey operations. They made it a separate position with a separate person. I like that. I like that direction. I'm not sold on Jonesy or Barriere's qualifications to hold these jobs as of yet, but hey, why not? What the hell else could go wrong? I mean, we're at the gates of hell as it is. What else do we got to lose at this point? We have no superstars here. We have decent draft capital, but that's it. A lot of bad contracts. I mean, they really can't F it up much more than it is now. So good luck to Keith Jones and to Danny Briere as they push us towards the future. And what is it? A new era of orange. Now, that's the new slogan. Not new era of orange and black, but a new era of orange. Is that some sort of connotation? Are we getting away from the black? I hope not. But Steven says he's good with Jonesy. He's not a cut from the typical Flyer legacy mold. Not right now, he's not. But Steven, how much is the alumni? How much influence does the alumni have over Keith Jones and Danny Briere? How much influence do they really have? How much influence did they have to get them their positions in the first place? And how much influence do they have over them now? That's the question. That is the question. You know what I mean? um, so no wonder no country has screwed with us. Actually, I was not I was a soldier, not a Marine. So no offense to the Marines, but I was a first sergeant in the Army. But anyway, went way over. I want to thank Al for coming on. I want to thank Steven for chiming in. I want to thank everybody for watching and everybody else who chimed in. It's a great, as I mentioned, it's always a great opportunity for me to come on and talk to you guys week to week. Please make sure you're tuning back in a little bit later tonight for the Fightins final as we'll recap game 2 of the Flyers. So the Flyers this time, the Phillies and Giants series. Man, got the Flyers on my mind. So I'll be back to recap the Phillies and the Giants game 2 of their series. Until we talk again next week on this program, and until I see you a little bit later tonight. That is the news, and I'm out of here.